going on tour is always sort of the third step in a process that begins with kind of an idea, a conception of what the band can be, and you know, kind of reinventing the basic premise of the group each time out, which is then followed by a recording, which is then followed by the tour. And the tour is always the most fun part because you get this immediate reaction from all these great people that come and listen, and there's a real spirit of sharing that the musicians have with the audience that kind of informs the music and gives the music this, you know, sense of having wings to fly with. That is just the best part of it for me. But this is a special tour because it's so fundamentally built upon the piece The Way Up, which of course was written by me and Lyle together, that is something that we've kind of been shooting for really from the beginning. If you look at the band's long history, from very early on there was an interest in trying to kind of reinvent the whole idea of what a jazz group can be in the modern era. And there are some real obvious top level issues that are you know, the electronic aspect of it, you know, the whole way that we use the guitars themselves as a kind of textural element, as well as the sort of narrative voice in the music, but and lots of other things, the singing, the percussion, the whole idea of using synths and everything as an orchestral element. All of those things are kind of on the top level, but sort of underneath that, right from the beginning, there's been this very strong interest in form itself. And if you look at even the early group records, we always had tunes that were 10 and 12 minutes long. And there's always been this goal of trying to, even if at the core of the music there was a sort of song-like element, there was some other stuff around it that set it apart, that kind of took it out of the whole idea of just being like a jazz quartet, which of course it kind of is at its center, but we always wanted to try to push that further by having other things going on, whether it's some kind of weird tuned guitar or something built into the structure of the song that takes it someplace else. And as the group has evolved over the years, that thing has been a constant of trying to really look at form in an extended way. And I kind of keep this list of things that I want to do that you know, that I keep tucked away someplace. And for about 10 or 12 years now, one of the goals for me was to eventually do a record where there was sort of one piece, there was one idea, it was one continuous straight thing. And it seemed like when Antonio joined the band, when Kong joined the band, finally we had really this ensemble that merited that kind of attention, and it seemed like a very natural place for us to go after Speaking of Now, which was our last group record. And so Lyle and I got together in a room for about 6 weeks, and in a way that was quite unlike any of our previous writing encounters over the years. We sort of hammered out every detail of every aspect of the piece together, really working on each little idea of it to create this whole thing. And you know, the way that we were operating was to kind of come up with something that we thought we could use the studio as a way to manifest. We weren't ever really thinking about how we would do it live. So I mean, here that we are now in the process of playing it live each night and presenting it in the form of a DVD, it's really something that I almost would have to say we kind of tricked ourselves by saying, okay, we're never going to play this live, so we don't have to worry about it. But in fact, it's been quite a challenge to mount this tour, to get the music to be what it is now. It required many, many hours of memorization work from all of us, because it's just the amount of stuff that you have to remember each night is enormous. But also, I think as we've been playing it now for several months, we've all found that the piece itself was designed to really showcase each one of us doing the things that we all really love to do, that we're good at, or that we think we're good at, that we try to be good at. And you know, it's been very, very satisfying to play it each night. The reaction from the audience has been kind of spectacular in terms of just the kind of thing that we feel from them each night. There's a real genuine understanding and appreciation of what it is and what makes it unique, I think, in this musical environment that we live in. At the core, the band is still kind of a quartet. There's this guitar, piano, bass, and drums thing that has been central to what we do right from the beginning, that is in itself challenging. I mean, the whole idea of guitar and piano together has been a challenging issue for guitar players and piano players from the very beginning. And I think Lyle and I have a very unique kind of way of blending our sounds, and as much as we acknowledge it and as much as people talk about it, it was kind of there from the first note that we played together. It was just kind of an instant way of thinking about music, that we were very compatible in terms of the way we could make our instruments speak and the way they would then ultimately blend together. As the band kind of progressed, we were able to expand it. And I have to say that so much of the expansion has been driven by the realities of the time that we're finding ourselves living in. I mean, the whole idea of kind of orchestration within a small group was something that was very limited kind of prior to like 1970 or so. I mean, it was, I mean, not that there was any, you know, bad sense to that limitation, but there was just only so much you could do with the instruments of a quartet, say. Suddenly, things started to change when there was this whole possibility of having polyphonic synthesis, having, you know, lots of different kinds of guitars that have very different kinds of sounds. Even the drum set itself changed quite a bit to have all these different textural possibilities. And I think that we kind of intuitively responded to that. And that then caused us to have to make some other adjustments. I mean, as we started to go more into electricity, it seemed like we needed other things to balance that were more acoustic. And the first kind of impulse into that area was to add percussion. And we, about that time, met Naná Vasconcelos, a great Brazilian musician who was kind of the perfect antidote to this additional level of you know, electric sound that we were adding to the band. And that whole thing of kind of balancing things has always been, you know, a major issue for what the group is. And that kind of continues into this edition of the band. Korea is such a surprise to us, and it's a recent thing on our radar, the whole connection to Korea. We never came here at all for the first 25 years or so of the band's history. Or we came here one time, and then there was a long period of time that we didn't come back. And the last time we played here at the LG Arts Center, I have to say we were all just in shock at the level of intense enthusiasm and knowledge and just the whole kind of rare, powerful, beautiful enthusiasm that we felt from the audiences here. And we're lucky. We get to travel around the world, and we get to not only play, we have this very rare privilege. As much as people come to see us, we get to see them. And it's very interesting in the course of a tour where we play everywhere. We're often playing, like we are now, a lot of the same music, and of course there is no language issue with us. We have no text. So we're able to kind of feel things from people that are really unique. And man, the spirit of the audiences in Korea just kind of stands apart from other places. It's very unique. It's that rare combination of when you're playing quiet, everybody's very quiet, but then when you want to feel this kind of rush of intensity as the music builds, you feel the audience going with you with that. And it's just a perfect balance for us of the kinds of things that we like to get from audiences. And when the possibility came up of coming back here to play for 5 nights, it just seemed like such a perfect place to do the DVD of this piece, which we knew we wanted to do somewhere. And as it's turned out, it's been just fantastic. I mean, everybody here is just great for us. The audiences are great. The place itself is fantastic. And we've just had a great time. And we're very happy that we've been able to share this time with the Korean audience and that they'll be represented on our DVD. Well, for me, music itself is kind of a mysterious thing, and mysterious in the best possible way, in the sense that it has a real kind of fringe benefit of not only allowing you to engage every aspect of your brain and of your spirit and your soul and everything in it, but it also teaches you things, and it keeps you very humble. As I think you look at the face of music and the incredible ways that music has provided a very deep and intimate form of expression for so many wildly different kinds of musicians. I think that every time, for me personally, that I'm able to involve myself in music, whether it's playing a gig or writing a tune or rehearsing or just playing in my room or whatever, it's something that to me is a real gift, and it's something that I feel unbelievably lucky and privileged to be able to spend my time doing. And I think that there are many other ways throughout one's life on earth that you can address a lot of the same things that you address as a musician. I think that ultimately you can find them almost anywhere, doing almost anything. But for me personally, music has been this incredibly deep well of learning, and I think it continues to be more and more. It is, as any musician will tell you, the kind of thing that the more you learn about it, the more you realize you have so much more to learn. And that's kind of one of the great things about it, is that it keeps you endlessly engaged. Well, the whole issue of complexity versus simplicity is a very interesting one as it comes to music, because ultimately, I don't think one necessarily wins over the other as an aesthetic pursuit. I think they both have kind of endless challenges in terms of, what it is, which story you want to tell. And for me, I would say actually coming up with things that are really powerful and really simple is actually harder than coming up with things that are really complicated. I mean, on the other hand, there's a certain kind of expression that the kinds of details that I think that this particular community of musicians is really good at discovering. There's a certain story that we can tell with that material that we couldn't tell without the kind of energy that we use to address complexity. And I think ultimately, as time goes on, for me, the specifics of the material become less important than in fact the things that you put inside the envelope of that material. And that ultimately is your humanity, your spirit, who you are as a person, what you love, what you believe in. And you know, there's an endless amount of stories to be told through music. And you know, for me, this band is so great because I think we all have this curiosity about how many angles can we look at this from? I mean, what else can it be besides what it's already been for us? And yes, we have a sound, and yes, we also have a history. I mean, it's a band that's been around for a long time. But what has been so great about this experience, not only the way up, but everything about this band, is that it's an area of research that has proven to be really enlightening in a lot of ways, not only for the musical side of it, but for what it offers us through the experiences that we've had of traveling around the world, through the sound itself, through the different ways that we've learned how we have to face ourselves to play it each night. I mean, there's so many different ways that the group has provided, you know, things of value in our lives. So, you know, that just seems to keep going on and on and on. Underneath all of the stuff that makes the way up what it is, there is a sense for me of really wanting to have a band that is really of the time that it's in, you know, that we're really like living in the moment that we're actually involved with as people too. And before Lyle and I wrote anything on this particular part of our story, we just sat around and talked for a few days, kind of about exactly that, this world that we're finding ourselves living in right now. And you know, as Americans, it's a strange time right now. We have a strange political thing going on that's been going on for a while, and like most artists, we're not really that comfortable with the profile America has right at the moment. As we travel around the world and we see the impact of technology and the way that it's affecting people's time management, it seems like everybody's in a hurry and everybody's like, you know, on their cell phones, and you know, there's this sense of everything kind of needing to get shorter and shorter and faster and faster and faster and all that. And I think that our reaction to that, from our perspective, is that the kinds of things that we've found that have importance and value to us are actually the kinds of things that take a really long time. You know, to get good on the guitar, to become a good improviser, to become, you know, a musician at the level that everybody on the stage is at, is not something that happens quickly. And I think that just in terms of the specifics of music, there's a whole range of things that have happened in the last few hundred years of you know, all of the incredible musicians that have addressed music that are not about things that happen in 3 bars or 4 bars. They have to do with the way things develop over time. And I think a big part of what The Way Up is in fact our relationship to current events, to the time that we're finding ourselves living in. And jazz itself is very, very well suited to do that. And there is a tendency in the jazz world to kind of keep looking back, because there has been, you know, this there are so many great musicians. There's so many things to still learn about what those musicians discovered. But my feeling has always been that's great, but we have to also keep moving things forward based on the reality that we find ourselves living in. Because the truth is, it's really different now than it was even when the band started in 1977, and it was certainly different in 1977 than it was in 1958, and 1958 was different than 1932. And as much as we admire what happened before, we can never really capture that the same way we can capture the things that are real to us, that we're actually, kind of having to live with ourselves in our lives. So that's been also a thing about this music. And there's also a kind of new sort of narrative storytelling that I feel it's emerging from this. I mean, I think The Way Up is of that, but I also see some movies now. I mean, there's a whole new kind of way of just spreading out the details with movies like Amores Perros or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I mean, there's this whole sense of time being thought of in a kind of different way. And I think as we were writing the piece, we were thinking of that. There is an influence of that, of like showing little things and then revealing more about them later as time goes on. And, all of those kinds of things affect us too. So, I guess for me, I love playing straight ahead, and I'm always going to want to do that. And by that, I mean more traditional kinds of jazz forms. But I think also this whole idea of continuing our research into these other areas is an important part of our mission too.